Has been a tragic few weeks for aviation, prompting the heightened scrutiny of air safety. Just days ago, rescuers located the wreckage of a small charter plane that vanished Thursday in bad weather.
The crash that forced the sudden shutdown of Alaska's airport sent a chilling ripple across aviation and security circles, not only because of the devastating collision itself, but also because of what it revealed about vulnerabilities in one of the United States' most geographically significant air travel hubs. The event unfolded with terrifying speed, and what had seemed like an ordinary day of flights and logistics in the northern skies abruptly turned into chaos. Passengers, crews, and workers on the ground found themselves swept into a scene of panic and confusion as emergency vehicles rushed to contain the disaster. The airfield, a vital artery for both commercial travel and cargo transport, was silenced in an instant, its runways closed, its towers directing no more departures, and its terminals echoing with fear and uncertainty. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The decision to shut the airport down immediately was not one taken lightly. Alaska's aviation system is not just a matter of regional convenience, it is a linchpin in the movement of people and goods across the Pacific and Arctic routes. When an airport of this magnitude halts operations, the ripple effects extend far beyond the state itself. Supply chains stagger, passengers are stranded, and the question of whether this was a freak accident or the symptom of deeper systemic issues lingers ominously in the minds of officials and citizens alike. This crash didn't just ground planes, it grounded confidence. It forced the nation to look closely at the precarious nature of air travel in a region where conditions are often unforgiving and where even a brief disruption can cascade into global consequences. In the moments leading up to the crash, the skies above Alaska were busy but unremarkable. Flights were arriving and departing as they always do, threading through corridors of air that connect distant towns and international routes. Then, without warning, something went disastrously wrong. The sound of impact cut through the hum of engines and chatter of passengers waiting in terminals. Windows shook as metal twisted against metal, flames and smoke billowing into the sky. For those on the ground, the sight was surreal, as though an ordinary morning had been split in half by a sudden, brutal reminder of just how fragile human engineering can be. The scene was terrifying, not simply because of the damage, but because of the way it underscored how thin the line between routine and disaster can be. Within minutes, alarms blared and evacuation protocols were triggered. Emergency responders streamed into the airfield, their vehicles flashing red and blue against the black haze that was now spreading above the runways. The airport, usually a hub of controlled activity, became a frenzy of rushed decisions and frantic movement. Families waiting for loved ones were corralled away from windows, while ground staff tried to keep order amid the chaos. Every corner of the airport seemed to vibrate with tension, and the knowledge that no flights would be leaving that day sank in with startling clarity. Closing an airport is never just about safety on the ground. It is a drastic, symbolic act that says the system has been shaken to its core, that for now, trust must give way to caution. What makes the shutdown even more significant is where it happened. Alaska's airports are more than just transit points. They are lifelines in a state where communities are often separated by vast stretches of wilderness, icy waters, and rugged terrain. For many towns, the only reliable connection to the outside world is by air. The closure of a major airport in such an environment does not simply mean a delay in flights. It can mean medical supplies that fail to arrive on time, food deliveries that don't reach their destinations, and business that grinds to a halt. The terrifying crash was not just a tragedy contained within the boundaries of one airfield. It was a disruption that reached deep into the veins of Alaskan life and radiated out into the global networks that rely on this strategic northern hub. The implications for national security were impossible to ignore. Alaska's location gives it a unique role in U.S. defense and international strategy. Its airports are not only gateways for travelers and cargo, they are staging points for military operations, surveillance missions, and Arctic monitoring. A shutdown following a catastrophic crash inevitably sparks questions. Was this purely accidental? Or was there a deeper, darker cause? Even without evidence of malicious intent, the simple fact that such a critical node in America's aviation map could be brought to a halt raises uncomfortable possibilities. What if such vulnerabilities were exploited? What if chaos on the runways of Alaska were used as leverage in a broader geopolitical game? In the shadow of this terrifying event, those questions hung heavily in the air. For those stranded inside the airport, the experience was surreal and unnerving. They watched as the departures board flickered with cancellations, as announcements echoed through the loudspeakers with strained attempts at calm. Travelers who had been expecting ordinary layovers found themselves instead sleeping on cold terminal benches, their minds replaying the crash outside and wondering what would come next. Parents held their children close, trying to distract them from the sight of smoke lingering on the horizon. Business travelers typed out messages explaining that they would miss meetings. The shutdown was more than a logistical hiccup. It was a reminder of fragility, a moment when modern air travel's promises of speed and reliability cracked open under the weight of disaster. The aviation industry itself was jolted. Safety officials across the country were immediately aware that what had just unfolded in Alaska would not remain an isolated case study. It would be dissected, analyzed, and debated, not just for the details of how the crash happened, but for what it suggested about the risks inherent in airports located in environments like Alaska's. Harsh weather, complex flight paths, and heavy reliance on air travel combined to create conditions unlike anywhere else in the United States. If a crash of this magnitude could bring down one of its airports, then what other weaknesses might be lurking waiting to surface? The shutdown forced airlines, regulators, and governments alike to rethink how prepared they were for the possibility that even a single catastrophe could choke off an entire artery of travel. On the ground outside the airport, residents of nearby neighborhoods watched the unfolding events with a mix of fear and resignation. Many had grown accustomed to the constant roar of engines above, the sight of planes cutting across the sky day and night. They knew the importance of the airport to their state and to the world beyond it. But as smoke drifted and news spread, the terrifying reality hit home. This wasn't just about missed flights or economic inconvenience. This was about safety in their own backyards. It was about the recognition that living near such a hub of activity came with risks that, while rarely realized, could change everything in a matter of seconds. The imagery of the crash lingered in minds across the nation. Television broadcasts replayed footage of flames, emergency vehicles clustered on the tarmac, and stunned faces of passengers evacuated from terminals. Social media filled with frantic posts from those stranded, interspersed with speculation and fear. Every image reinforced the sense that something deeply unsettling had happened, something that could not be dismissed as just another aviation accident. The airport's closure was not simply about cleaning up wreckage or resetting systems. It was about reckoning with a terrifying breach of normalcy, a moment when the smooth, carefully orchestrated ballet of air travel came crashing down in smoke and fire. The shockwaves extended beyond Alaska. Across the country, other airports quietly reviewed their safety procedures. Airlines reconsidered contingency plans. The crash served as a grim reminder that no matter how advanced technology becomes, no matter how many redundancies are built into systems, the possibility of sudden catastrophic failure can never be eliminated. The shutdown of Alaska's airport stood as proof. The skies are never entirely tamed. Each flight carries with it an element of risk, and when that risk manifests in tragedy, the consequences ripple far and wide. In the international arena, the timing of the shutdown carried added weight. Alaska's airports serve as bridges between continents, gateways for flights traversing the Pacific and Arctic regions. With global tensions already heightened in various corners of the world, the sudden closure of such a crucial hub did not go unnoticed. Allies and adversaries alike watched closely, measuring not only the immediate disruption but also what it revealed about American resilience. Could the United States withstand the sudden loss of one of its northern gateways? Could it ensure that such a terrifying disruption remained a rare anomaly rather than a vulnerability waiting to be exploited? The questions were whispered in diplomatic circles, even as the smoke had barely cleared. Inside aviation control rooms, the crash and shutdown became the center of intense scrutiny. Pilots and controllers across the country found themselves in tense discussions about procedures, emergency readiness, and the limits of their own systems. The terrifying reality that an airport could be brought to a standstill in moments highlighted the delicate balance of safety and efficiency that governs modern air travel. It underscored how little room for error exists, how even the smallest miscalculation or unforeseen failure can cascade into disaster. The psychological toll was perhaps one of the most overlooked consequences. Passengers who lived through the crash or its immediate aftermath would carry those memories long after the airport reopened. Families who relied on the steady rhythm of flights to connect with loved ones found themselves shaken by the reminder that those connections could be severed at any moment. Workers at the airport, from ground staff to controllers, bore the weight of knowing they had witnessed something that would be etched into history. Fear doesn't dissipate easily after such a terrifying event, and the echoes of that fear would linger in conversations, decisions, and even in the hesitancy of travelers boarding flights in the days to come. As officials worked to understand and respond, the airport itself stood silent. The runways, normally alive with the thunder of jet engines, lay empty. The terminals, designed to pulse with movement, felt hollow and tense. The silence was eerie, a powerful reminder that airports are more than just places of transit. They are symbols of connection, movement, and progress. To see one of them shut down so abruptly was to feel the fragility of those connections and to sense how easily progress can be undone. The crash that forced the shutdown of Alaska's airport will not soon be forgotten. It was not merely an incident confined to one runway in one state. It was a jarring event that reverberated outward, unsettling individuals, industries, and nations. It was terrifying in its suddenness, its destruction, and its implications. And even as life moves forward, even as planes eventually return to the skies above Alaska, the memory of that silence, the day an airport was forced to stop, the day normalcy was shattered, will remain a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities we live with in the age of flight. The sudden crash that brought Alaska's airport operations to a halt has already been etched into aviation history as one of those moments that exposes hidden layers of vulnerability within a system often taken for granted. Yet to fully understand the gravity of what has happened, one must look not only at the event itself, but at the web of implications, the broader context of Alaska's role in aviation, and the unique set of circumstances that make the shutdown of this particular airport more than just another entry in the long list of aviation mishaps. The crash may have taken place on a single day, but the consequences and questions it raised extend across years of planning, policy, and perception. Alaska is unlike any other state when it comes to aviation. While major cities in the continental United States rely heavily on sprawling networks of highways, rail lines, and ports, Alaska's rugged terrain and extreme climate mean that air travel is not a convenience, but a necessity. Many of its communities are inaccessible by road for most of the year, leaving aircraft as the primary mode of transport for people, mail, medicine, and food. A single airport in Alaska often serves as the heartbeat of entire regions, linking remote villages to the outside world. The shutdown triggered by the crash did more than ground planes. It severed lifelines. The silence on the runways translated into silence in communities far removed from the crash site, where residents were left wondering when the next supply of essentials would arrive. The sheer geographical scale of Alaska adds another dimension to the consequences of this crash. It is the largest state in the United States, with distances between major population centers stretching for hundreds of miles. In such an environment, the airport network acts as a web of veins and arteries, sustaining life across vast frozen landscapes. When a crash brings one of these nodes to a standstill, the effects ripple outward like shock waves. A delay in Anchorage or Fairbanks can cascade into shortages in Nome, Kotzebue, or Bethel. The terrifying crash that shut down Alaska's airport therefore became more than a local incident. It became a statewide disruption, a crisis that reminded residents of how fragile their connections truly are. The economic implications were immediate and profound. Alaska's airports are critical junctions not just for passenger travel, but for cargo. The crash and shutdown disrupted the flow of goods, from consumer products bound for store shelves to industrial equipment needed for oil and gas operations. International shipping lanes also felt the disruption. Alaska's airports serve as refueling and cargo transfer points for flights crossing the Pacific. When such a hub is suddenly shut down, global logistics companies are forced into rapid rerouting, often at tremendous cost. For industries already struggling with tight schedules and fragile supply chains, the sudden paralysis in Alaska was a nightmare scenario. The terrifying crash became more than just a tragic story. it became a cautionary tale about the fragility of global commerce when even a single node in the network collapses. The weather and environment of Alaska cannot be ignored when considering the significance of this event. Flying in Alaska is notoriously difficult, with pilots navigating mountains, glaciers, and unpredictable weather systems. Snowstorms can sweep across runways in minutes, fog can obscure visibility, and icy winds can challenge even the most skilled aviators. These conditions create a backdrop of risk that never fully disappears, no matter how advanced technology becomes. The terrifying crash was a grim reminder that in Alaska, the environment itself is always a factor lurking in the background, amplifying dangers and testing the resilience of aviation systems. When the airport was forced to shut down, it wasn't just because of one aircraft's tragedy. It was because of the ever-present possibility that such a disaster could strike again if caution was not exercised. The cultural and psychological impact on Alaskans themselves was equally striking. For residents of the state, airports are symbols of connection, hope, and opportunity. They are the places where loved ones are reunited, where medical emergencies find their lifelines, where young people board planes to seek education and careers beyond the wilderness. To see one of these airports shut down following a terrifying crash was not merely an inconvenience. It was an emotional shock, a wound to the psyche of communities that depend so heavily on air travel. Wondering when their children would return, businesses wondering how long they could survive without deliveries, and patients wondering if their treatments would be delayed. All of these anxieties came flooding in as soon as the runways fell silent. For pilots, air traffic controllers, and aviation professionals, the crash raised haunting questions about training, technology, and preparedness. Alaska is home to some of the most challenging flight paths in the country, requiring pilots to have extraordinary skill and resilience. Yet, even with this expertise, the terrifying crash proved that no amount of training can completely insulate against catastrophe. The shutdown forced professionals to confront unsettling truths, that every landing and takeoff carries inherent risks, that even the best prepared systems can falter, and that vigilance must remain constant. The crash became a case study in humility for an industry that often prides itself on precision and control. International observers also paid close attention to the shutdown. Alaska's airports are not only vital for domestic travel, they are integral to global aviation. Many flights between Asia and North America pass through Alaskan hubs, either for refueling or cargo transfers. The sudden loss of such a hub caused immediate disruption in trans-Pacific routes. Airlines scrambled to reroute flights, adding hours to journeys and consuming additional fuel. For countries reliant on smooth trade flows across the Pacific, the crash underscored how a single point of failure in Alaska could ripple across continents. It was a terrifying demonstration of how interconnected the modern world has become, and how a crash in one frozen corner of the United States can send shockwaves from Tokyo to Los Angeles to London. The strategic importance of Alaska in military terms further elevated the significance of the airport shutdown. With its proximity to Russia and the Arctic, Alaska serves as a crucial staging ground for U.S. defense operations. Military bases in the state rely on airports not only for logistics but also for rapid deployment. The terrifying crash and subsequent shutdown sparked questions about what would happen if a crisis occurred while a major airport was offline. Could the U.S. respond quickly enough to emerging threats? Could allies count on uninterrupted support? The crash was a stark reminder that civilian and military aviation in Alaska are intertwined, and that vulnerabilities in one sphere can have cascading effects in the other. Media coverage of the event magnified its impact, drawing attention to every angle of the crash and shutdown. Images of smoke, twisted metal, and grounded planes dominated television screens and news feeds, imprinting the event in public consciousness. The constant replaying of these scenes deepened the sense of terror and uncertainty. For viewers far from Alaska, the event served as a reminder of how fragile even the most advanced transportation systems can be. For Alaskans themselves, the media spotlight was both validating and invasive, amplifying their fears while exposing the unique vulnerabilities of their way of life to the entire world. Beyond the immediate disruption, the crash and shutdown forced policymakers to confront difficult questions about infrastructure and investment. Alaska's airports, while vital, often struggle with limited resources and aging facilities. The terrifying crash highlighted the consequences of underinvestment in safety measures, training, and technology. Lawmakers found themselves facing renewed pressure to allocate more funding, not just for Alaska, but for aviation systems nationwide. The crash became a rallying point in debates about how much should be spent to ensure that air travel remains as safe and reliable as possible. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the Alaska airport shutdown after the crash? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.